Greater Good Radio. Connect, learn, heal, and grow.
The way that we structure the MDMA experience is to think about it as 2 days, not just a day experience. So the first day, we start usually at 10 in the morning or so. People can come to the hospital or wherever the treatment room is earlier. They do a little check-in, but then usually the session starts at 10 in the morning. It goes 8 hours. We do a supplemental dose after a couple hours of half the initial dose to make it go longer.
It goes longer, but not more intense is kind of the idea.
It kind of hits a plateau.
Yeah.
You can adjust the intensity a little bit. So we say that you can administer this second dose, half the initial dose, between 1.5 and 2.5 hours. So in protocols, you can have windows, like where you don't have to do it all at the exact same time. Well, for example, if you were to give 1.5 time at the very beginning, it would be stronger than just one.
Yeah.
And so the longer you wait...
But it would be a higher peak.
It would be a higher peak.
And it's still the same duration, whereas this one is more flat.
Yes.
Because otherwise they're peaking and you're like, I can't really do anything right here.
Well, you can a lot at the peaking. Well, I mean, it's more difficult with the peaks of LSD or things like that. But even the peaking of MDMA, people are able to process.
Well, they'd be there by yourself without the therapist, or the sitter would be kind of just holding the space and checking out during that, or no? Not
well, it differs. Like there's moments where people don't talk to the therapist for an hour. So if you haven't heard from the patient in an hour, that's the idea, is you just check in. How are you doing? But people have these incredible dynamic, metaphorical, poetic, visual experiences that symbolize their life story, and they're retelling the story. I mean, I'm just reminded of one person who was a veteran and had rage. And he came home from the war, from Iraq, and he would throw things at his wife. He never hit her, but he just was like a bundle of rage. And under the MDMA, he had this feeling that his warrior self was like this gorilla that he had locked in a cage inside his chest. And that this gorilla had reached out of the cage with a knife and was stabbing him in the side. And then under MDMA, he's realizing this is a part of himself. It's a part that he doesn't fully trust because he saw what it did in Iraq, and he did horrible things in Iraq in some ways. But that he realized that he was making it worse for this part of himself to keep it all locked up. So he decided he would let it out. So he reached down and he pulled out the knife from his side, and then he unlocked the cage, and then the demeanor of this gorilla changed, and they hugged each other from these evil red eyes, and then they became friends, and then they were like catching up like old friends. So people will have this kind of inner process, and they're rewiring their brain in that process. They're bringing things up from the surface. They're dealing with the different emotions, and they can also be quiet for a very long time. So other times there can be at the peak, you can be wanting to share and wanting to talk. So it's different from different patients. But the idea, again, is that we give half the initial amount to make it longer. And that's what is what's called the optimal zone of arousal. So when you are traumatized and you're often like hyper vigilant, you're super aroused, everything is frightening, you hear a little noise and you jump and you think it's back in the war or whatever, but you can't make much progress when you're hypervigilant. The opposite is that you are so emotionally numb as another defensive strategy that you don't feel anything.
It's like alexithymia kind of?
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly, that you can't really feel your emotions. But then the MDMA brings you into this optimal zone where you're emotionally open, but you're calmer, your fear is reduced, and so you're not this hypervigilant, and so then you can process these emotions.
If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.